I wanted to share with you guys a big life update, something very significant that has occurred to me very recently. So, I'm officially in a relationship, well, at least I have been for the past 3 months. And what I wanted to share is how life has really changed for me since being in a relationship, and some of the things that I need to take into consideration now being with someone and having to take care of another person, and also take into consideration what the other person, my partner, my girlfriend, and what she desires, and also what we desire out of our relationship. And there's definitely significant changes as opposed to being single, and I wanted to bring that up so maybe it sheds some light on what life is like being single and also what life is like being in a relationship. So I think one very noticeable thing is how I utilize my time. Now being in a relationship now, I have to be willing to spend more time with my girlfriend, with my significant other, as you would say. And yeah, I would say, you just spend more time with each other. You just go on dates, just hang out with each other, go to different places, you'd watch shows and movies together, or you'd eat together, and if there's some place to go, you always make plans together what you want to do. And obviously, that's less time for yourself. So, usually, what I always invest in my hobbies or hang out with my friends with the free time that I had. But now more of that free time is being spent spending time with my girlfriend, uh, being invested in my relationship. So all the things that I mentioned, the activities that we do, whether it could be just hanging out, eating, watching shows and movies together, or exercising together, doing any sorts of activities, we would be doing that together, and I would prioritize utilizing my time to do that than what I did before being in a relationship. So that means sacrificing time, free time for myself, maybe my alone time, maybe me going to cafes and reading by myself, or hanging out with my friends. Well, I still do that, but I spend less time doing that, and I don't spend as much time with my friends as I would with my girlfriend. And so, you know, I always prioritize the time spent with my girlfriend, with being in a relationship. I think another thing too, being in a relationship that has changed, is just being able to fulfill her needs and taking into consideration of her desires and wants. And usually it's just so much easier for me to just think about myself and what I want. I know I want things a certain way. I want it I like to eat certain things. I like to do this at a certain day and time. But now that she's in the picture, I have to take in consideration what she wants and what she desires. And a lot of times, in the very beginning, it's very challenging. It's been quite an adjustment for me because I'm always thinking about myself, and then she reminds me that I don't take into consideration what she wants. There's certain needs that she wants and she desires, and maybe we do too much of the things that I want to do, and we have to, balance that to certain things that she wants to do. And so, I try to be more selfless and always take into consideration like what she wants to do, her desires. Maybe she wants to watch certain shows because I have my preferences in shows and movies, and so does she. So, you know, should give her recommendations, and of course, I oblige. Like, I have no problem watching her shows. Maybe we could try to take turns in that. But, you know, if it was just me, then I could watch whatever I want all the time, right? And also when it comes to like eating out, she has her preferences and so do I, and being able to balance that out and knowing that there's certain things that she wants that I might necessarily be on the top of my list, but I'm still willing to do it because I care about her and I want her to satisfies her cravings with food or shows or anything like that. And also it goes with activities or events that we do together. It's the same thing. Just balancing the preferences and always seeing what she needs. And also I think when it comes to fulfilling her needs and taking into consideration of her desires, it's also trying to match with her emotionally. Because and this is something that we actually talk about, and she's very well aware of like that women are more emotionally in tune with themselves, where guys are more logically focused and more less emotional. So we tend to think more and we tend to think more logically, while women are more emotionally driven and really connect with other people emotionally. And that's generally the case with everybody in relationships. So understanding those dynamics and understand like where she's at emotionally, and knowing that I should you know be able to match at some capacity to some extent, and understand where she's feeling, and know that I care for her, and know that I love on her, and make sure she's okay when she's not doing well, and if she has something she wants to share, just being able to lend an ear and always listen to her and offer any advice and just be there for her, when and to comfort her when she's in need, when she's not feeling the best. So that side of me has definitely been growing, and that's an area where initially it's been a weak point, because it's not something that I'm so used to doing, like matching someone emotionally and also attending to their needs uh at an emotional level. And that's something like I've been learning to do as well. And being able to comfort someone and attend to their needs more oftentimes than not, right? When as you're single, you don't really worry about that. You just concentrate on your own emotions. Obviously you have friends and other relationships where you do that, but I mean it's more heightened when you're in a relationship, when you're in a more committed relationship where it's more intimate, right? And so that's when those things really are more heightened, when you're trying to understand each other emotionally. So that's another thing that I've really come in tune with and try to understand more about myself, and trying to see how I could be there for her emotionally as well, and always try to comfort her and fulfill her needs and desires. So, that's another area where I feel like since being in a relationship, that has really changed or has revealed about myself, things that I need to work on. Um, and I think uh, also just one of the biggest things is just being more selfless. I always try to be selfless. I try to uh, be very giving with like my time, with like the things that I do, giving gifts. I really do try to be so selfless in the way I live my life and try to care for people as much as I can. But obviously, when you have your alone time, like you just want to do things for yourself, and you want to do things that you enjoy doing, right? But less of that time, when you have less of that time and more of that time is being invested and poured into someone else as well, you really have to learn to continue to be more selfless. And I notice it takes a lot out of you for you to do that. It takes a lot of energy. It takes a lot of emotion, and because you're just really giving out, right? You're really being selfless with just investing into your relationship, right? And but I think that's been really good because it shows me like, oh, there are things where I do have a tendency to be a little bit more selfish, where I'm just only looking for myself and my needs, but and being more dismissive of, other people's needs, especially, my girlfriends, especially being in a relationship and thinking about the other person. Like, they have their needs too, and I might be overlooking their leads because I'm so fixated on the things that I want to do and the way I want to do it. But there's another way, there's another perspective to take into account, and also really see her perspective on how certain things are, and taking into consideration like what her suggestions on how to do things, and um, yeah, and just not being selfish with like the decision making, and also like the way I want to do things, but being more open and more selfless and accepting input and suggestions. So being selfless in that way too is just very important, and something that I've really tried my best to adapt to and try to be open with. And that's something like I noticed a big change then too. I think with that though, as much as you pour out into the relationship, I think you receive so much as well. And that's another thing too, because, you know, when you're single, you only have yourself to attend to your needs, right? But, there's someone else pouring into you and also supporting your needs. And whenever you need help, they could lend a hand. And when you need someone to talk to, they'll be there and listen to you with your problems and always support you. And having that kind of support system from someone that you're very close to, and that you really deeply care about, it you know it really means the world to you, right? It just, the kind of support and the encouragement that you get from being in a loving relationship, it really uplifts you. And as much as you pour out into that person, you receive just as much back, right? And you feel so filled, right? You feel um, like you got a new burst of energy. You feel so encouraged, right? And you feel so uplifted, where whereas opposed to not having that, like, you don't really get too much of that in an intimate setting. And to have that, it really makes a difference on your outlook on life, and knowing that like someone is there to support you no matter what you go through. I mean, it just, having that kind of support, it really is a big lift of encouragement to me. And it motivates me to continue to just go on with whatever I want to do. And um, like, whenever I do feel down, I don't have to feel down, because there's someone to pick me up, to help me back up on my feet. And having that support, um, I think it's something that everybody needs. And for me to have that, I feel so grateful and so appreciative of it, knowing that there's someone that will always be willing to help you when you you're in that time of need, when you need that time of help. And so, just as much as you can do that for someone else, that also gets reciprocated. And to have that, you just feel very appreciative, very grateful. Um, and it just means the world to you to have that kind of support system right by your side. So I think, those are the main things really for me when I look at relationships. Like, those are the changes, very noticeable changes that I've noticed since being in a relationship for the past 3 years. And for me, like, just acknowledging those things and just building on the things that can be improved upon, because a lot of it has been adjustments and just me figuring it out. But I think uh the more we're in the relationship, and when we approach it with a certain type of humility, then I think it could be very fruitful, and it could be like the relationship could really build you into being a better person for both parties, especially if you come it with a humble approach, knowing that there's areas that are being exposed that we see in one another, but knowing that there's potential to grow after seeing those things and being vulnerable, but still being able to accept the other person and love on them and care on them and help each other grow in those areas that where we are weak at, and the strengths that we have, we could use that to support one another as well. um, and so I think overall, being in the relationship and having those changes, yeah, there are some sacrifices, but the sacrifices might be worth it if you're in a worthwhile relationship. So, that is some of the things that I want to share on my perspective on it since being in a relationship. Maybe from a year from now, I could share another video of how it's been like, and since then, since from this point. But we'll see. I take it day by day, and I accept the changes that has happened, and a lot of it I'm really grateful for and very appreciative, and I hope to build on that in the foreseeable future.